So we're going to be talking about Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, which we both
Denis.
saw. Say again.
Denis.
Denis. Okay, Denis Villeneuve. Hopefully, I got his last name right.
I'm not going to be able to pronounce that correctly because I don't speak French. I just know it's Denis.
Denis Villeneuve.
That's like
That's good enough for me for now.
yeah,
Which we both saw in IMAX yesterday,
yeah,
which was pretty sublime for me
yeah,
because it was my first time back into a theater since COVID. And also because the movie was awesome on IMAX. And having seen it that way, I just feel sad for anybody who watched it like on their couch at home or even on a typical big screen.
yeah. HBO Max style, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the movie to do that. I don't think. This was. That's so cool that this is your first movie back. I've seen a couple, and this was definitely the best theater experience I've had in a long time. Period. I think because it was just so perfectly designed for the immersive experience. It just has me so excited. I love movies. I loved this movie. It was the perfect way to express this is what going to the movies is all about, in my opinion. It was, I loved it.
Agreed. This series of ours is called Minor Quibbles, and I think we both have a few quibbles, but they're definitely minor in comparison.
Yeah.
So I kind of almost just want to start by saying, like, even if we end up kind of like tearing into it a little bit, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen, I think. And it was a spectacle, and I'm still thinking about it the next day, which is always a great sign.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like one preface to this, and the other preface is that there are spoilers ahead for anybody who's watching this. So if you haven't read the book or haven't seen it yet, you may want to just put this on pause for now and come back later after you've seen it.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect movie for this, whatever we're doing here, because I'll say just for myself, I loved every minute of this. I was so pleased. It's rare to go into a movie feeling like it's a lock. And this was one of those for me. I was very excited going into it. I think the last time I felt this confident that I was going to love something was Dark Knight, 15 years ago, whatever it was. It's been a long time, but I remember just feeling like there's no way this is going to be bad, and it was great. So this is a perfect movie for this because anything I have to say about it will be minor. And it's almost not even worth bringing up because I can just say straight up 10 out of 10, I loved this movie. So yeah.
Agreed. Same page. I'm not actually sure even where to start because for a movie that I enjoyed this much, it feels sad almost to just go straight into critiquing it.
Yeah.
So maybe can we just talk a little bit about a few of the things that we each thought were awesome about this movie, and there were a lot of them, but just maybe in your mind start to pick up like maybe your top 2 or 3 things that like just you're thinking about now. I'll just like start real quick just with a couple of them. Like I thought the sound design was incredible, and it really meshed with the score very well. I thought there were so many moments in the experience that I felt really swept away by what the score was doing for what I was seeing and the intensity of the sound design, even down to little details, just like the way that the ornithopters sound when they're spinning up, and the way that the impacts from the hand-to-hand combat sound. That was amazing for me.
I agree wholeheartly. To that same point, the voice I thought was one of my favorite things, period. And here's why I love movies, and I love movies like this, is that I'm not much of a conceptualist. Even when I read something that has great description, I have a hard time when I'm reading a book picturing what it is that I'm seeing. So I could never tackle a movie like this as a production designer or a director, because it's like you have a million ways in which you could construct the way a thopter looks. And I had no idea really how it was supposed to look. But I thought that they just nailed it. It was like, that's exactly what it should be. And so, yeah, the design of everything I thought was probably the best bit about that. Production designer should be so proud of themselves. I thought everything was very appropriate and definitely felt like correct. Like, yeah, that's how all of that stuff should look. The ships, the the design of the still suit, you know, every bit of those elements. But for me, I think the biggest plus was not understanding what the voice was meant to sound like. And the first time you hear it truly used by the Reverend Mother, when she brings Paul in to kneel in front of her, the whole theater shook and I felt compelled. And it was just amazing. It was just, I can't describe it any other way than just, it was amazing. And every time after that, used sparingly, it was just fantastic in the Thopter when they're being taken away and Jessica says, kill him and free us. The amount of fear I felt with that sound design for the voice was perfection. I love that.
The way that the editing dropped into character subjectivity for the moments that the voice was used at the very beginning was, I thought, really excellent and subtle. The first time the voice gets used on Paul in that room, where it's like a moment passes when he doesn't realize that it had passed, and the editing kind of cuts you from one moment to he's standing right in front of her.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like how you kind of, it just gives you a really great subjective sense of like, that's how it felt for Paul to have the voice used on him. And so from that point on in the movie, whenever it's used, you have that to return to in your mind. And so you understand the effect the voice is having. So that was just a great like little establishing bit.
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about the design of the movie, we should talk at least a little bit about the amazing thing that is just the overall visual production design of this. So many elements were just, it's pretty much trite to even say how beautiful this movie is to just watch. You could have turned off the sound and made it impossible to understand what the characters were saying and still probably sat for 2 hours and 30 minutes and kind of enjoyed it because it was just so beautiful. It almost reminded me, in some ways it reminded me of like a Tarsem film, where his visual command of colors and shapes and interesting compositions and strange costumes, all integrated into these really, really memorable scenes. Except in the case of this, the movie itself was very, it was very plot driven. It was very coherent as a movie, and it's like you got all of that artistry, but you were also able to watch a movie that had like a solid plot and a lot of action to it, and wasn't kind of just this impenetrable, weirdness.
Yeah. Yeah, they crushed it. There's no other way to say it. I think Greg Fraser is going to win an Oscar for it. I'll just call that now. He's one of the hottest DPs working right now. I'm not sure if you note that he also shot the upcoming Batman movie, which is also getting a lot of praise for the way that it looks, even though it's not out yet. It's he crushed it. The lighting, the compositions, the colors, everything. But Denn-ee, as a director, is just so in command. Narratively speaking, he really understands pacing and structure, and he just has a great team around him. And I think he has great taste. And I think I've said this many times to you before, is that I think 90% of being a great artist is having great taste. It's less, I mean, obviously you have to have skill and you have to be highly skilled on top of that, but more than half the battle is having great taste. And I think Denn-ee just has impeccable taste for something like this. Yeah. All right. So I would like to continue to praise this movie, and I think maybe we can save the last like 5 minutes of this for that, because it deserves it. And I could talk all day about the things that I loved about this movie. But I will bring up my first minor thing with this is maybe it's because the book has so much more time spent on describing the importance of water and describing just how uninhabitable the desert is. I don't think that the movie did not do it or did not address it. It just did not quite feel as oppressive as I thought it would. And there's just a few things that happened that made that feel that way to me. Like there's the scene where Paul goes out by the palm trees for the first time, and he sees the person watering the palm trees. I guess I was under the impression while reading the book that even the concept of going outside at all without any cover in the middle of the day is dangerous. Like you aren't even supposed to do that. And for him to wander out there just didn't seem right to me. And I think if there's one thing I wish just would push this past my, minor quibble about it, is just I wish that the importance of water and the oppression of the environment itself just felt stronger. I
agree with you there. That hadn't occurred to me as I watched it, but now that you mention it, I do agree. I thought it was interesting that you had dialogue stating that it was dangerous to be outside. I think they explicitly said that, like during the midday, we have to close the building up. Why are you outside right now? It's dangerous. But one gets the impression that it's dangerous in the same way that a very hot day on Earth might be dangerous. Like, yeah, you could easily get a sunstroke or dehydrated. Just don't stay out for a while. And
Right.
you kind of wanted it to feel a lot more searing. And
Yes.
Even some of the scenes where they've kind of, Jessica and Paul have been in the desert for some time, relying on very few resources. I kind of wanted to get more of a sense of their dehydration. I wanted to see chapped lips or like broken lips, that kind of sense that this thing around you is going to kill you imminently.
Yeah, in a matter of hours, not
Yeah.
even just like after a few days out in the
Yeah.
desert. It's like it's meant to during the day kill you, like, and I know that they even say that in the film, like it's pointed to. I guess I just didn't necessarily feel it. And part of that I think comes to, I didn't get the sense, or I don't know that if you're watching it, I would like to ask somebody who has not read the book and has seen the film how they feel about this, but did they feel like Arrakis is wanting for water? Like it is scarce and it's hard to get, and it's the supply that you have is extremely limited, even if you are the Duke who's overseeing the whole planet. It's like you have a reserve at your capital or whatever, but that's about it. I didn't get the sense of that. And I know, again, the book goes into great detail about those things and the importance of it.
Yeah.
All of that said, I don't think that it wasn't an element, especially that incredible scene where Stilgar is introduced for the first time, and he comes in, and I'm glad that they kept that in, where he spits on the ground, and they take it as an offense, but then it's, no, that's very respectful. He's giving us his water. Of the things that they could have edited out of this movie, that could have been something that would have been on the chopping block, like the dinner scene. I was waiting for the dinner scene to happen, and it never did. And that's a very important scene in the book, but they removed it. I think that was a good edit.
I missed that a little bit. I would have liked to see that because, the last time I read Dune was probably about 10 years ago, but I was really obsessed with that book. And one of the things about it that I liked so much was the intrigue. A great amount of it is really the intrigue, the plots within plots. In fact, they say that phrase over and over in the book, and there are always these machinations happening. And there's this dinner that occurs when signals are being sent, and behavior and subtle gestures are being noticed. And I just would have favored more of that, and maybe less just out and out action.
Yeah, I think this is just perhaps. Maybe it's greed or maybe it's not. I don't know, because I think we can have our cake and eat it too with a movie like this. Is I could easily have 12 hours of this to cover all of the intrigue in the book. Like if they maintained the aesthetic and the performance throughout those 10 hours, I guess, that it would probably cover, I would happily watch that. And I think it should happily be funded by whomever to make that, because the intrigue of it all is the best part. And you're right about that. And maybe another issue I had, again, very minor. I loved the casting of Liette. I thought that was a really great choice, because I thought aesthetically she was great. But there was something missing in the performance. There was a little bit of like intrigue or cunning that we didn't get. And I don't know if it's because we didn't get it via the performance or because half of the intrigue of Liette happens during that dinner scene.
Yes. I agree. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I agree. There's just that sense that it's missing. I'm more in favor of kind of blaming the removal of that content from the script than I am blaming the performance per se. I thought the performance was good, and I can't see a performance like that just sort of
Well, it's yeah, I guess it's not necessarily a performance thing. It's more of like a character thing because, you know,
Sure.
nobody acts in a, well, not many people act in a vacuum. You know, they're being given direction and told what to do or how to present. And I don't think there was anything wrong with the performance per se. It's just the character itself didn't feel quite as, and they mention it many times that she's like in the middle. It's like, are you a citizen or are you Fremen? By the
Yes.
way, I totally, like, one of the things that just threw me off this whole movie was I pronounced things in my head reading this book
Uh,
so differently from the way things were pronounced here. Like I thought it was Freeman, and I was like,
okay.
okay, you know, it's like they're the free men. Like that's what I thought it was. So to hear Fremen just was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't remember when I first heard Fremen. I think when
Mhm.
I initially read the book, I also assumed it was Freeman, but at some point. So anyway, I've been living with the word Fremen for quite a while, so it
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
jarring
Yeah,
to me
that's
to
just
hear
me.
it.
That's
Um,
my stupidity, I guess. More
I
than,
think that they may have used Fremen in the Lynch adaptation, so it could be that that was the first time I heard the word actually spoken aloud. But
which I've never seen,
yeah.
and I'm excited to watch because I'm a huge David Lynch fan. I've been kind of saving it because I
Mm,
know that it's, for one, I know that he wasn't super happy with it,
yeah.
but also it's like there's only so much David Lynch content in the world, and you kind of have to pace yourself through it.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah, those were the probably the two biggest issues I had. The oppression of the weather or the planet itself, and also just the intrigue and lack thereof.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the action. I thought the action was well done, and it was much bigger scale than I expected.
Yeah.
And I also think that when you read the book, when things start happening, the moment, I think it happens a little later in the book, but it's like the moment he crushes his tooth,
Mhm.
the book just moves at
Mhm.
a really fast pace. It's like
Mhm.
250, 300 pages of like who's who and why and what's going on and confusion and intrigue and all these things. And then once the action starts, it's very straightforward. It's like, you know, an arrow traveling through the air and to its target. And it gets there much faster than you expect, I think.
Mhm.
So I didn't mind the action. I thought that was kind of in tune with how the book feels, you know? Um,
I I enjoyed the action as well. I didn't mean to convey that I didn't like that. I guess just on balance, if I had to give up something in order to get more intrigue into this movie, I would be willing to give up some of the just out and out action in favor of the
mm,
intrigue. I think like just to air my my most major of minor quibbles with this movie is I thought that the movie lingered too long or spent just too many minutes in Paul's visions.
mm,
I thought they could have cut 2 to 3 minutes of it, and it would have felt tighter. It just that type of stream of consciousness montage of vaguely connected images, I think is easy to do or easier to do from a filmmaking point of view than creating a nice coherent uh, uh, set of events that connect to one another with the appropriate thematic images. And
yeah.
so whenever we jumped into, okay, Paul is having a vision, I felt a little bit, I just felt a little bit disconnected and bored. I
Mm,
kind of like for the, 100th time that we saw Zendaya lingering in the, at the peak of a dune, I
yeah.
was over it. I was like, I get it. You're seeing her. We don't need to see that more.
I agree. She is one too many looks over their shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, it's
I
like I
mean,
get it.
very beautifully composed scenes. I thought it was excellent, but
Uh,
a lot of it, I think, just reminded me of visuals that I've seen before.
Sure.
It felt.
Amongst a movie that uh, pretty much avoids romanticism
Hmm,
from an imagery point of view,
hmm,
they hit that one super hard. You
hmm,
know, it's almost like you get so you get so used to or attached to the endorphin rush of getting to be romantic in a film, visually speaking, like, and the idea that this is like total conjecture. Like I have no way of actually backing this up because they're professionals, and of course they're not going to just like go after the low hanging fruit, I suppose. But you're in Jordan, you've got dunes everywhere, the sun's going to go down at some point, and that's going to be beautiful. And you have to try really hard to be like, I want to point the camera at the sun. Like, just let me get the sunset, the silhouette. And they avoided it for most of it. But then when you get it coming in with Zendaya, just like,
it's like you got a sunset and you've got Zendaya. So
it problematically almost feels like we're watching a Dior commercial or something, where she's so beautiful, the location is so beautiful, and she's not even, perhaps one of the issues is that she's not dressed like a Fremen in the desert during the sun being out. She's got like the shawl, it's
the sort of white, I think white linens.
Exactly. It feels like a perfume commercial, because
it's totally true. You could just transplant many of these shots into like Spice by Dior commercial, and it would be a total fit.
Yeah, that's perfect. I cannot blame them, because the instinct, or the desire to do that is got to be super strong. But I agree, as opposed to being 2 hours 35 minutes, it could have been 2 hours 25 minutes, and you just cut out 10 minutes of those moments that happen to linger too long.
Well, I'm gonna pose a sort of more speculative quibble, which is I can't know if this is a worthy quibble until I speak to somebody who has not read the book and seen this movie. And my speculative quibble is, I wasn't sure how coherent this film would be if you hadn't read the book. Dune is notorious for being very complicated, very dense, and for throwing a lot of vocabulary at you. I mean, the book has like 4 appendices. Within the first few pages, you get a bunch of vocabulary that is even kind of a struggle to understand when you're just reading. You have the opportunity to reread. But, for the viewer who didn't read the book, if I were to speak to that person and say, what do you think about the myth of the Kwisatz Haderach, or however you say that, would they even know what I'm talking about? Would they even have heard that word and understood its significance and who it's referring to? And
or did they just hear which fair. It's almost like if you were to give a quiz to somebody, it's like, please explain who and what the Reverend Mother is and does. Or even the Baron. It's like, what's the Baron's deal? Which is, I think that's maybe a reason to more appreciate this movie than anything. And I guess you're right. You have to speak to somebody who is totally in the dark before going into this movie, because I like not being thought an idiot going into something. And I like having to do a little homework to understand. And I don't mean homework in the sense of like, now I have to read up on the thing, but I guess just have some more thought to it. Some of my favorite series of all time can be considered confusing or boring in the first 5 episodes, because you're just making sense of like, wait, who is that person, or what's the link? I think The Wire is probably the best example of that, where these properties are not even remotely the same, but how many slang terms are used in The Wire? How many characters are in The Wire, and how many of them do you have to make sense of via the chain of command on both sides of it? It's like, wait, really? Who is, Rawls? Who's like, what does he do? What is the point of him? It's the same.
You can, it's funny because with The Wire, you can of course follow along and get the broad strokes of what is going on. There's a murder investigation, there are some cops, there are some people who are in gangs, there are some people who are kind of in between, and you just follow it. But what makes The Wire incredible, I think, is that so many little moments, tiny brushstrokes, are brilliant when you understand the nature of the interaction between 2 characters. And that depends on you actually understanding the police officer's place in the hierarchy, or their prior relationship, or something that they mentioned previous to that. And I think in particular, when I think about some of the lore in the Dune world, one of the most interesting parts of the lore, I think, is the Bene Gesserit background and the Missionara Protectiva, where the movie does not explain. Well, maybe it spends 1 line on it, but I don't think it really forcefully explains the fact that the Bene Gesserit went to all of these planets, created a myth such that at some future point, they could safely go to said planet and kind of play out the myth, and the natives would follow along with it and totally believe it, and they would basically be able to be kept safe. Did the movie really convey that? I don't think it really quite did.
No, I don't think it conveyed quite a bit of things along that line, but I don't know that you lose anything as a viewer of just the movie because you don't know those extra details necessarily.
Well, let me explain. So in the movie, it's clear that many of the native dwellers of Arrakis, whether Fremen or not, see Paul, and they clearly regard him as having some special thing about him.
Right.
But if you don't understand that there's like a really significant bit of background there as to why they think that, you might mistakenly conclude that this movie was a little bit sort of problematic in that it's presenting this sort of very basic white savior thing, when that's actually not at all what is happening.
Right. Yeah, that's as I was watching it, I felt that, and I was like, this movie will get flamed by the wrong kind of person who is going to completely miss the forest for the trees and just see this as, there's just another white savior story, which, yeah, you're right, it's unfounded, but I guess that's the benefit of having, spent the time to read the books. And then, it's like, if you want to, I don't know, I guess it's so interesting in this day and age to walk out of a movie like that, where I think you even had left just a little bit before we did. And there was two people who were sitting right in front of us who were speaking about the movie as we were walking out. And Sasha and I were just kind of like eavesdropping on what they were saying. And the one guy was like, nah, I thought it was pretty bad. And the other guy was like, yeah, the score really took away. It could have been better, and it just goes to show you that it's like different strokes, different folks, it's almost like lame, I think, now to just go all in on loving something because you love it, because it's like, if you say you love something and then somebody one-ups you by saying, well, it wasn't that good, like, didn't it just have too many of these things going on, then you're made the fool for just like loving the thing.
Right.
And I think, how many months did we spend, or how many years did we spend watching Game of Thrones and having a growing fan base, loving the series, and then a whole subsect of people being like, but I read the books and this actually, so it's not as good as you think, or whatever, there's always going to be something like that. I guess it's interesting that this is the inverse as we're talking about it, where it's like, no, it's much better than you think, because it's not just a white savior story. It's actually like some intrigue, like they're planting ideas on planets. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to that for sure. I guess my summary is that I think this movie probably tops out at maybe like an 8 if you didn't read the book, and I think it reaches a 10 if you did. Simply because the missing context just fills in a lot of the things that I think are important. I think that just make the story that much more special.
Yeah. Going into a project like this and being an audience member, knowing the context of every scene as it arises, and that Denn-ee is doing a really good job of being faithful as you go along, because you can tell he cares very much about it. So when you have the scene with the Gom Jabbar and I don't remember what the box is called that he puts his hand into, it's like, before he even walks into that room, we know what the context of this is, and we get to just let the scene wash over us as it happens, whereas somebody who knows nothing about it is learning as they go and may miss some things. So it's
as we're watching, we're thinking, oh, they really rendered that so well. And it really
exactly how
I had in my head, or they did it even better than I had imagined when I read the book.
Exactly. I appreciate it. I'll just say as a point where this is where, to me, Denn-ee excels as a filmmaker and is kind of in his, not his own league, because other filmmakers are just as good as he is, but in the league he's in, like that upper echelon, is that he wove in the poetry of the hand very well. And that's so purposeful, not only by the plot point of him sticking his right hand into that box, but also he has a moment where he holds the water in his hand,
Yeah.
but has a little bit of sand within the water, and then the burning hand while the hand is in the box,
Mm.
plus holding the sand and the spice for the very first time. That is poetry, you know, in
Yeah.
visual form. And I really appreciate that he takes the time to say, no, that's important. You must have that. Because you could easily cut all of that out and save yourself a minute and a half probably. But
Yeah.
he fights for it, I think, and it works for me. I love that.
Mhm. I think maybe like the only other minor quibble that I can think of, maybe more will come up in the future, but was that I wanted the spice to be a little bit more boldly represented. There are a few points when the spice is in the air, or for example, when they're going to see the spice mining operation, and one of the characters I think says, fly higher and you'll really see it. You don't actually see like a patch of desert that in my mind looked like, oh, that's like clearly the spice area of the desert. It just looked like desert. And I wanted it to just be a little bit more, there to be more oomph behind. Maybe the color could have been a little bit more extreme.
I agree and I don't agree at the same time. Having a scene where she literally says fly higher and you'll see it, and then you don't see it, is just like a little strange, where it's like, look at that cloud. Nice cloud. But I did really love, especially the moment they're in the still tent, when the spice is just in the air.
That was well done, I thought.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, this flecks of light that you're seeing kind of dancing kind of thing. That was great. But there were other moments when it could have been more, given how central the spice is. I wanted it to just I wanted it to pop a little bit more.
I don't know if this was smart or a little disappointing. I think it's the former, because it would have just added time and unnecessary aesthetic, I guess. But I'm a little surprised that we didn't get at least one Gurney Halleck song. We never see his baliset.
He is very lyrical in the film. They retained that, but agreed, there could have.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. Like, I thought there was going to be at least one moment where he was going to, at least in the background, if not like taking the moment to do a song, Lord of the Rings style. It's like, I'm surprised that he wasn't at least, chilling in the background, just like noodling or something. A little surprising. But
I would have liked to see Josh Brolin do that for sure. One thing that actually you reminded me of that was another quibble, and this I think will be the last one, is we are not given any substantive sense of what a mentat is or what they do. So you have like Thufir, and I thought that casting was great. And there is a moment in the beginning when his eyes kind of flit to the back of his head, and so you have this sense, okay, this guy has some type of special calculating ability, but that is it. At no other point in the film does it explain what that was, what the significance was, etc. Nor that the twisted mentat, Piter de Vries, is the same type of individual. I think that's just kind of left. It's basically left out of the film.
And it's like, again, if you are familiar at all with the book and you understand those things, there are the little clues. Like, they both have the tattoo on their lip, and it's like, that makes sense. Okay, so Piter and Thufir both have that. So they're both mentats. We get it. But you're right. And I wonder,
and the lore there is so interesting too. There are so many bits of this that make sense when you take it as a whole, where it's like, okay, like in the past in this universe, computers became intelligent, and basically the machines started killing everybody. So there was a big war, and called the Butlerian Jihad, where basically the humans fought against the machines and won. And then from that point in history forward, computers were not allowed. So computers are, sorry, no more, because it's too dangerous to even have them. And so instead of computers, we have mentats who are able to perform calculations in their mind using like sort of special training. And that's so cool. And it sort of also relates to, the concept of like what type of weaponry works and doesn't work in this world. And anyway, I just would have liked to see some of that.
I wonder if we'll get a little more of a taste of that in the part 2, because I think, if memory serves me correctly, the Baron even says, after the whole experience with the gas and the tooth, he's like, he's not he's pissed off, but I think the biggest thing is like, well, now I got to get a new mentat. And it's like, that's the most inconvenient thing that happens to him amongst the whole thing is like, well, now I got to get a new mentat.
Right.
And maybe they'll go into that, you know,
Yeah.
when, you know, the fear, I guess, ends up with him, you know, it's
Yeah.
like,
If they were going to do it, I guess that would be when they would.
yeah, maybe there'll be some sort of explanation because he does, I think there is like isn't there an extended portion of the book where he kind of praises the fear a little bit for his mentat abilities or has heard of his mentat abilities and, you know,
Something
it's
like
like,
that.
yeah, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it's, once again, the design was great though. I love that the eyes go back and, you know,
Absolutely.
the casting was fantastic. And, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that really struck me as problematic or, you know, bothersome. I think it's like pretty much it. It's just about as solid as it's going to get.
Yeah. I don't think there will be a better Dune movie in my lifetime. I just can't imagine that happening.
No, and it's like, why would you at this
Yeah.
point? You've got
Yeah.
something that exists very fully formed right in front of you. And, you know, we just got to cross our fingers that the exact same team comes right back and does part two. I don't see why not. You never know, schedules are weird or whatever, but it's like, you just have to hope that they just completely maintain what we just saw into the next one and that it gets everything that it wants to complete the story the way that it needs to. Because if they do, then it's like, boom, there it is. There's your, you know, we don't need another one. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. We got Peter Jackson's version. It's like that will exist for another 100 years. I know we got like an Amazon style one that's coming up, but it's like, we don't need that. Just
that I think that might be set at a different time period.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's
Different
retelling
age.
the same story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, man. So how do we how have we decided how we're rating these things? I know I got a note from somebody close to us who was not all in on how we rate these things and said, you guys really got to figure out how you're going to do that.
Yeah, well, I was partially thinking that we get rid of ratings entirely because that just, I don't know, just kind of trying to wrap everything up in a single number or a thumb up or down is.
Yeah, I agree.
Realize the.
Yeah, maybe it's more about, do we endorse going to see it, or maybe it's that's kind of like, is it recommended to go see it now, how to see it? Well, I know that the first way we started this was like, I wish that I waited for Squid Game for a point where I was sick so I could just binge right through it. So maybe it's do you want to watch it, and what's the best way to do it? You know?
More of a qualitative rating. I like that actually. This is a go see it in the theater. It's worth paying the extra money to see it in the theater, especially in IMAX.
Yes, I agree. I think,
and it is, I would say it's even worth actually trying to read the book first.
Sure. Yeah. I think if you want to go the extra mile just to have a better understanding, yeah, we're going to have to like find somebody to tell us what they thought of, you know, of this if they had never read it. But I'm going to agree that this is not just a marketing ploy. Like, seeing this particular movie IMAX style with the sound design of an IMAX theater is 100% the way to watch this movie.
Yep. Spend
the money. Retroactively, Halloween Kills you can watch when you're real bored and got literally nothing else to watch during the Halloween season.
Yeah. I think this is a good system.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. How do we sign off? Fear is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer.